On a cold October morning in 2012, Raymond Harlan walked out of his modest home in Alder Creek, Pennsylvania, before most of the town had even stirred. It was just after 5 a.m. when the 42-year-old electrician loaded his gear into his silver Ford 150, gave his wife a quiet goodbye, and drove off into the dark. He told her he was heading north, alone, for a weekend hunting trip in the Poconos, a yearly ritual, a reset button. That was the last time Raymond Harlan was seen alive. He was supposed to be back by Sunday evening, October 14th. But when Monday morning came and went with no word, his wife, Marla Harlan, called the local sheriff's office to report him missing. Raymond had been dealing with job instability after a series of layoffs at the Stanton power plant. Marla told investigators he had been under pressure but never seemed unstable. Still, deputies treated the case as a possible wilderness disappearance. He had mentioned camping near a remote game reserve outside Hartsville, a rugged area with dense woods and barely any ranger presence. Search teams scoured the forest. Cadaver dogs were brought in. Drones and helicopters combed the canopy. Not a single piece of evidence turned up. No truck, no footprints, no sign of Raymond. His name never appeared in the reserve's handwritten entry log. His license plate wasn't logged by patrols or captured by trail cameras. It was like he never arrived. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comment where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you, and don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Then, 3 weeks later, something odd happened. Marla received a letter, postmarked from Buffalo, New York. Inside was a single note. "I'm gone. I need peace. Don't look for me." No signature. Just that, Marla swore the handwriting was Raymond's. Investigators were less certain. But with no body, no financial activity, and a note suggesting he left on his own, the case was quietly reclassified. Voluntary disappearance. By December 2012, the search was called off. His file remained technically open but inactive. Raymond Harlan had vanished. From his home, from the grid, from memory. By mid-2013, Raymond's presence had all but dissolved. His cell service was shut off, his union dues unpaid, his social security number untouched, his bank accounts inactive. His name was quietly removed from national missing persons databases. And as the case faded, Marla made her own moves. She sold their home and relocated to Millersport, about 40 miles south. She started a new job, rented a small apartment, and in the same month, filed a claim on Raymond's $60,000 life insurance policy. The policy had a clause. If he was missing for 180 days and presumed gone, the payout would be processed. It was. She didn't file for a death certificate. She didn't apply for survivor benefits. She simply moved on. Neighbors said she changed, grew distant, cold. She stopped answering questions, stopped making eye contact. In early 2015, a man named Gavin Reese moved into her apartment. He had a minor criminal past, property damage, trespassing, nothing major, but no job, no business license. Just a guy doing odd jobs. And by 2016, he was using Marla's address on his tax filings. By 2018, Marla listed Gavin as her emergency contact. That same year, she initiated a refinancing request on an old personal loan originally co-signed by Raymond. When the bank asked for documentation, she submitted a notarized affidavit claiming he had ceased contact and was presumed deceased. No death certificate, but it was enough for the loan to be closed and the account written off. Raymond Harlan was no longer just missing. He was erased, except from one person's memory. Lena Harlan, Raymond's younger sister, never accepted the official story. A nurse from Allenville, she believed the letter was a setup, staged or coerced. She didn't believe her brother would walk away from his life or from her. From 2013 onward, she called the sheriff's office, emailed, showed up in person, but nothing ever changed. So in 2019, she took matters into her own hands. She hired a private tracing firm that specialized in long cold asset recovery. Their mission, find that truck. The 1999 Ford F-150 was never found during the original search. No scrapyard records, no updated registration, no auction logs, until May 27, 2020. A state trooper in western New York pulled over a gray Ford pickup outside the town of Belhurst, nearly 250 miles from where Raymond was last seen. The truck had expired Pennsylvania plates. The man behind the wheel was white, in his early 50s, and alone. He had no license, no ID, nothing. But when the VIN was processed, it told a different story. The vehicle was registered to Raymond Harlan, a man who had been missing for 8 years. The troopers took Ethan in for further questioning. At first, he was calm, calculated. He maintained that the truck had changed hands multiple times over the years and denied knowing anything about its original owner. But inconsistencies began stacking up. He couldn't recall the friend's last name. Said he picked the truck up somewhere near Harrisburg, but couldn't say when. When asked about how long he'd had it, the timeline kept shifting. He was released on a misdemeanor traffic violation, but by then, red flags were flying. Investigators in Pennsylvania were notified. The Hartsville Sheriff's Office reopened the dormant file. The vehicle was impounded and towed for forensic analysis. And that's when things got even stranger. Under the truck's rear bench seat, technicians discovered something lodged deep in the seam of the upholstery, a folded hunting license issued in 2011. It was faded, damp from years of weather exposure, but the name was clear: Raymond C. Harlan. More than that, the license had a small brown smudge that tested positive for human blood. While the sample was too degraded for immediate DNA results, it was enough to officially reclassify the case. Raymond's disappearance was no longer voluntary. It was a potential homicide. Marla Harlan was brought in for questioning within days. She stuck to her story. She hadn't heard from Raymond since that morning in 2012. The letter came from Buffalo. Yes, but she didn't know anyone in New York. No, she couldn't explain the truck being found there. No, she had never heard the name Ethan Cole. But behind closed doors, investigators were growing suspicious, especially when one detail came to light. Gavin Reese, Marla's longtime boyfriend, had once lived in Buffalo, briefly, in 2012. He had no criminal record in New York, but he had a cousin there, a man named Travis Wynn, a mechanic who had operated a salvage yard just a few miles from where the postmarked letter had been mailed. Investigators pulled Gavin's old phone records and began reconstructing his movements during the fall of 2012. A pattern started to form. Calls pinging from towers outside Buffalo, receipts from a roadside diner off I-90, a gas purchase under a Bona debit card tied to a P.O. box registered in Reese's name. Then came the biggest break yet. On July 9, 2020, an anonymous tip was phoned into the Belhurst PD. The voice, a man, said only this: "You're digging in the wrong place. He's not in the woods. Check the water. Ask Gavin about Lake Briar." Lake Briar was a small, man-made reservoir about 15 miles east of where the truck had been stopped. It had a boat ramp, a couple of fishing piers, and one cove that hadn't been dredged since 2003. Divers were dispatched within 48 hours. On the third day of the search, sonar picked up a large metal object submerged in the silt near the center of the lake. What they pulled from the water wasn't what anyone expected. Lake Briar was calm that morning, unassuming. Its still surface mirrored the gray clouds above, hiding the secrets that lay just beneath. The dive team, working off sonar data and decades of sediment, had already found fishing lures, a rusted-out bike frame, and part of a stolen snowmobile. But on the third day, at exactly 2:47 p.m., their equipment picked up a dense, oblong shape in the silt, metallic, large, and unnaturally heavy. When it was finally winched to the surface, investigators fell silent. It wasn't just a piece of debris. It was an oil drum, a sealed 55-gallon steel barrel, the kind used for industrial storage. And the moment it cracked open, the smell confirmed what many feared. Something, or someone, had died inside. Inside the barrel was a decomposed body of a man. The remains were skeletal but still partially clothed. Scraps of flannel and denim clung to the bones. Forensic techs later confirmed the clothing matched what Raymond Harlan had been last seen wearing 8 years earlier. Dental records and a partial DNA match with his sister sealed the identification. Raymond had been murdered. The autopsy couldn't determine an exact cause of death, but a small fracture at the base of the skull and ligature marks on the wrist painted a chilling picture. He hadn't gone willingly. Investigators now had a body, a location, a truck, and a pattern. And at the center of it all, Marla Harlan and Gavin Reese. With renewed urgency, detectives executed a search warrant at Marla's Wilmar apartment. They found notebooks, financial statements, and a few photographs, nothing out of place at first glance. But hidden inside a hollowed-out Bible in a nightstand drawer, they uncovered something far more disturbing. A second letter, written in the same scroll as a note postmarked from Buffalo. It read, "They'll never find me. I'm tired of this life. Don't waste time chasing ghosts." The problem? Forensic analysts determined the paper had only aged 2 years, not 8. That letter wasn't from 2012. It had been written in 2018, 6 years after Raymond disappeared. And then came another break. A man named Kenneth Bo Travis, cousin to Gavin Reese, was picked up for questioning. Bo had a history of meth possession and was no stranger to fast cash deals. When detectives showed him a photo of Raymond, he blinked twice, then asked for a lawyer. But before his attorney arrived, Bo said one thing: "If Gavin did what I think he did, that barrel ain't the only one." Investigators were floored. More than one body. The focus shifted. They started digging into Gavin Reese's past, his old job sites, his travel history, and the people he'd quietly cut out of his life. And that's when they found the connection. In 2010, Gavin had briefly worked at the same power plant as Raymond. Only for a few months, but long enough to know him. Long enough, perhaps, to learn about Raymond's annual hunting trips, his routine, his vehicle, and long enough to know he'd be hard to find if something ever happened in those woods. Police also uncovered a troubling financial paper trail. Gavin had opened a credit line under a shell name just weeks after Raymond vanished. The address? A Buffalo area P.O. box. The same region where that letter was mailed. Gavin's life, once modest, had grown more comfortable in the years following Raymond's disappearance. He had no steady job but bought expensive tools, electronics, and paid off Marla's back taxes in 2014. None of it made sense, unless he had help. The biggest turn came on August 18, 2020. A forensic sweep of the truck revealed a match. Trace blood DNA from the truck's carpet matched a second unknown male. Not Raymond, not Gavin, not anyone in the system. But it tied directly to a cold case out of Allegheny County, a missing contractor named Jesse Lyle, last seen in 2015 after responding to a Craigslist ad for a carpentry job near the Pennsylvania border. His vehicle had never been found, and neither had Jesse. Now, the barrel, the blood, and the truck formed a terrifying mosaic. Gavin may have been a serial predator, targeting men on the fringe, working class, disposable, men no one would immediately miss. And Marla? The question was whether she was a pawn or a partner. Prosecutors needed more. A body, a confession, a missing link. But then something unexpected happened. On September 2nd, 2020, just weeks after the body in the barrel was confirmed to be Raymond Harlan, Marla was brought in for a second round of questioning. This time, she was different. No calm front, no folded hands. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Then, just as the interview was about to end, she muttered something under her breath. He said there'd be one more, just one more and we'd be done. Investigators froze. One more what? She refused to elaborate. Said she wanted a deal, immunity in exchange for testimony. But before that could be arranged, she asked for a break, a glass of water, and left the interrogation room with her attorney. 2 hours later, she was gone. Not arrested, not detained. Released pending further investigation. But she never went home. Marla Harlan disappeared that night. Her phone was left on the kitchen counter. Her car was parked in its usual spot. But her purse, her keys, and her passport were missing. A bolo was issued within 24 hours. State lines were flagged. Airports were notified. But she was gone. And 5 days later, investigators received a voicemail left on the tip line. It was distorted, run through voice filters, but clear enough to understand. You're still chasing shadows. The real story didn't start with Raymond, and it sure as hell didn't end with him. Authorities trace a call. It pinged from a cell tower off Route 62, just outside an abandoned farmhouse Gavin had once been hired to demolish. When they arrived, the place was empty, but in the basement, they found something chilling. Another oil drum, sealed, heavy, and this time, There was a name scratched into the lid. It wasn't Raymond's, and it wasn't Jess's. It was someone else. The abandoned farmhouse off Route 62 had been silent for years, its foundation cracked, windows boarded, roof sagging like tired shoulders hunched under years of rut. But the oil drum in its basement changed everything. Scratched across its rusted lid was a name, Jordan Tells. A name investigators recognized immediately. Jordan had disappeared in 2011. A part-time roofer from Erie County, last seen leaving a job site after a heated dispute over payment. The foreman at the time, a subcontractor from Luzerne County known only by a nickname, Gav. Someone used that trust to silence him, but we're not silent anymore. That vigil lit a fire. New tips poured in, some credible, others bordering on delusional, but one stood out. A trucker named Tommy Quince called from a highway diner near Youngstown, Ohio. He claimed he saw someone matching Marla's description with a rough-looking man at a gas station off L82 days after she vanished. Security footage was grainy, but the timestamps and frame-by-frame enhancements were enough to confirm it was them. Marla and Gavin had gone on the run, and they ditched a Ford F-150 for a different vehicle, a 2007 blue Dodge Caravan, plates registered to an elderly woman in Utica who'd reported it stolen the week before. The chase was now real, and fast. Federal agents traced transactions along the route, cash payments at motels, surveillance videos at ATMs where Gavin kept his face turned away from the camera. But Marla, she looked straight into the lens every time, almost like she wanted to be seen. What made it worse was what they found in the back of the van after it was abandoned in Indiana. A duffel bag. Inside, $4,300 in rolled cash, prepaid cell phones, burner IDs, and a bundle of handwritten notes. Lists? Really. Names and places. Coordinates. Next to each, a short comment. Quiet. No neighbors. Cash job under table. Weak. Drunk. It was a list of victims. Or targets. Maybe both. The FBI concluded Gavin had developed a selection system, favoring isolated, struggling men, often tied to trades or temp work, with minimal family ties. People who could vanish without drawing attention. But the biggest reveal came from a note scrawled across the back of a fast food napkin, found wedged in the van's glove box. There's one more, just like I said, the one nobody looked for. It was signed only with the letter R. The signature didn't match Gavin's handwriting, but the phrasing, the tone, felt eerily familiar. Marla or someone else? That question led investigators back to a cold case from 2007. A man named Thomas Vero, age 40, disappeared after applying for a subcontractor gig through a classified ad in upstate New York. His body had never been found, but his van? Burned, gutted, and left in the woods outside Buffalo. Who placed the ad? Authorities couldn't say. But guess which company had leased a trailer nearby for a summer contract in the same month? G&I Utilities. A fresh excavation began near the old G&R site, now an overgrown field of weeds and broken asphalt. Cadaver dogs sniffed something. The soil was disturbed, but they didn't find a body. They found a metal case, locked, corroded. When it was finally pried open, they discovered over a dozen Polaroids, some water damaged, others clear as the day they were taken. Each photo featured a man, always alone, usually outdoors, sometimes sleeping, sometimes looking straight into the lens with a startled expression. On the back of each photo was a name and date, one per year, from 2005 to 2012. All men, all still unaccounted for. And the final photo, marked 2012, was labeled RH Last One. Raymond Harlan. The case exploded. National media caught on. Talk shows, podcasts, and amateur sleuths flooded forums. Some called Gavin Reese a blue-collar Bundy. Others speculated Marla was the real mastermind. But none of it brought the fugitives closer to capture. Then, 3 months later, during a routine border check near Winnipeg, Canada, a customs agent pulled over a rental car with 2 passengers carrying forged documents. The man gave the name Gregory Rhodes. The woman said her name was Emily Reese. But their fingerprints told another story. It was them. Gavin was arrested without resistance. Marla, however, had to be restrained. She reportedly screamed, "You said they'd never catch us," as agents drag her from a vehicle. In separate interrogations, both turn on each other. Gavin claimed Marla wrote the letters and selected the victims, said he only cleaned up. Marla painted Gavin as a manipulative sociopath who used her grief to trap others and control her through fear. Neither story added up, and neither produced full confessions. But the evidence was stacked too high to matter. Gavin Reese was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder, multiple counts of kidnapping, fraud, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy. Marla Harlan was charged with accessory to murder, insurance fraud, conspiracy, and obstruction. They pleaded not guilty. The trial captivated the nation. Grisly details, emotional testimony, and the haunting images of the Polaroids kept the courtroom packed. Raymond's sister Linda testified. So did Jesse Lyle's mother, trembling as she held up the last birthday card her son had ever sent. In the end, the jury deliberated for less than 2 days. Gavin Reese was sentenced to life without parole. Marla Harlan received 45 years. And yet, even with the case closed, a chilling silence remains. Because not all the men in those photographs have been found. Not all the coordinates have been searched. And as investigators dig deeper, trying to unearth the full truth, they recently uncovered a storage unit rented under a fake name back in 2013. Inside, there's a freezer. It was still plugged in, and what they found inside has never been released to the public.